All right, well, I will call this meeting to order at 4:02. And can we get our roll call, please?
Larry Hampton.
Here, present.
Randy Rickert is not here. Casey Banks.
Present.
Megan Markle. And Judy Brown is not present at the time.
Thank you. We have two sets of meeting minutes to address. The first one comes from January 30th, 2024. That was in our packet the last time that we met. Are there any questions, comments, changes for the January 30th meeting minutes?
No.
I move that we approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, those are approved. For the April 23 meeting minutes, I had a question about, let's see if I can find the right page. It was regarding the number of projects. The meeting minutes said 6 and I only counted 5. So I wanted to check, was I forgetting one or was that an error?
I think that sounds correct. In 5 overall, are we, which project? I mean, which?
Yeah, so the meeting
funding
minutes,
source?
April 23, it's the first page, item number 4, Roman numeral 4, kind of towards the bottom. The paragraph says 6 applications for CET funds and then 5 applications were deemed complete. So I just wanted to know if staff would run through the list of those because further down in the meeting minutes, we saw Housing Authority of the Yamhill County, Catholic Charities, Habitat for Humanity, and then there were 2 from Avamere that were ruled out. Was there a 6th one?
There was an independent, it was a duplicate. So it was another one from Avamere, resident's brother, by the last name of Velez. And so that was just a duplicate of the same under Avamere that submitted for other residents as well.
Okay, so 3 from Avamere, 2 of them were the same.
Total.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Any other questions for the April 23 meeting minutes?
No. I move to approve the April 23 meeting minutes.
Second.
All right, raise your hand if they're good to you. Any opposed? That's passed. Do we have any public comments today?
We have not received anything. It's been pretty quiet since the last meeting.
Is it okay if I ask a question about public comments? I noticed in the packet, one of the, the documents about how trust fund, the procedures of how the things operate. It just included a note about the commission would first invite applicants to make a proposal about their project and have things for public comment. And I was curious if we've been doing that correctly in the past year. Have we been, is this the meeting where the public comment happen, or is that a separate meeting to allow for public comments on specific projects?
That's a good question. I was thinking that if we had received public comments, that of course we would discuss it here, but also likewise, perhaps in city council. when we make your recommendations to city council, if we have received comments, we typically include that in our presentation or the packet materials for council to review. And that way they can see if there's concern and discuss that as they're deliberating. I don't know, Clay, if you've had the opportunity to have a different experience with affordable housing prior to my arrival.
No, that's pretty consistent, and we would expect that the way that we've been doing it, which would be agendizing things, putting them on an item, having them both an opportunity, if there was a person who wanted to make a public comment during your meeting as the Housing Commission, we would allow it at that time as part of that proposal, so I think that would substantially comply with how that's written. And then in addition to that, when it goes to city council, if there's a public comment, there would be opportunity for public comment there too. So we don't really exclude, and then also if we receive any written, those would come to you as part of those or alongside those proposals. It's just that, and Leanne, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've gotten outside public comments that seem like they needed to be submitted as the proposals came into the packet during the Affordable Housing Commission meetings. And then if we do get any as these move forward, we would receive those public comments. I think were there any public comment received for the Newburgh Affordable Housing Trust Fund when that went?
No, it's just thinking about it cumulatively during the entire process, I have not received one. So maybe that's remarkable, given the different points where folks could make comments in this process, since it's been several months at this point. So, but certainly we will keep the commission current on comments that we receive as we receive them.
Yeah. And I know it'll be, another season before we're reviewing another round of applications. But when that comes up, I was wondering if we could hear from the folks making proposals and then receive any public comment if there is about those proposals, rather than on here on our agenda. Public comments is usually above where those proposals would be happening. So just curious about that. Okay, well, miscellaneous items. An update on the future eligibility criteria.
Yeah, so what was submitted in your packet was sort of a compilation of notes that Clay and I sort of put together, hopefully addressing questions that you had posed in previous meetings. So we're here to try to answer questions if you have any remaining since looking at those materials submitted with your packet for this meeting.
And as a reminder, this was something that was the commission requested this, and so staff created a memo, and that's the materials there. And so it's a continued item, and it's one that both Leanne and I are happy to assist with, but it's one that's kind of at yours to deliberate on.
And is
I know
this
with a smaller than normal party, that's not always easy to deliberate on, but
right? Is this the pages that are resolution 2021-3730?
Like, that's what I was asking about prior to the meeting.
Because when we click in the agenda, it takes it down to that page labeled attachment 1, resolution 3730. The 2021 made it. I wondered, was that something that was adopted in 2021? Or is this something brand new?
Yeah, so there should have been a memorandum that was specifically for that research kind of assignment. And let me just go through and look.
There is something later on in the packet labeled memorandum.
Yeah, we had a total of 3. So Right, so.
I think the later one was just updating us on where things are that we dealt with, the recommendations we made and what's happened so far or not with the city council.
Correct.
Yeah, and the workshop
Um,
one,
Right.
block grants.
Yeah, let me go back and look in the folder here.
What it appears to me is that the only thing from the memo for this item that came to you is the attachment that accompanied it, but not the memo itself, is what it looks like to me.
Same. So
So-
my apologies. Let me.
I don't know if this is, I mean, this is, my memory is that our biggest questions had to do with kind of the for-profit in some of these things, if they would ever be eligible or not, and if, you know, how we would track it and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And
And
yeah,
I can tell you what changed in this memo, because it is a continued item primarily. And Leanne, if I miss anything, yeah, feel free to correct me, but basically there's a single paragraph, and we're happy to recirculate these or however makes the most sense.
Is it possible to screen share?
Yeah,
Uh,
let me, I've pulled up it looks like the PDF of this somehow got PDF'd without the Word document portion of the memorandum. So let me pull that up for you folks.
So while she's pulling that up, basically it was either pretty much or exactly the same memo with an additional paragraph added that introduced the Newburgh Flexible Development Tract, which is a chapter in the municipal code that's related to affordable housing. So one of the things that was discussed at the last meeting was, where do we have affordable housing provisions and requirements, and how does that work? And so it's essentially in that chapter. So that's where, if there are going to be incentives or someone wants to do affordable housing, and what kind of inducements can we offer through the development process, that's the chapter that talks about that process. And so that was kind of tacked onto the top of the memorandum that you had received last time. And we kind of left it there because initially what you had received from staff really went through talking about where the Newburgh Affordable Housing Trust Fund comes from, where some of the other items that talk about affordable housing are, and some of the core definitions associated with those, so that you kind of could look at, because I think that to the point that folks are talking about, can we make awards to private entities as well as nonprofit entities, and what does it say about that? Those are where we looked to where we had existing code related to the construction excise tax fund, as well as the Newburgh Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah, and it's, Faye and I are kind of chatting off to the side here. It's not allowing me to screen share. So I don't know if there's something, Faye, that you can hit that would enable me to do that.
Leanne, would you, if we weren't in a meeting that's public and that I want the public to be able to access, I would put it into the chat. I could put that additional paragraph in, but I don't think that would be a good way to continue being transparent. So I'm a little hesitant to do that.
Was this something we needed to take action on tonight?
It is not. It is an informational item for your discussion.
Yeah, it was essentially an FYI that we wanted to circle back and make sure that you had the information that you were hoping to get from staff.
Yeah.
So Clay, is there like, with meeting minutes or something like that, is there a way to make sure that they get that?
What we'll do is we'll take the memorandum and circulate it. So it's nothing, I don't think it needs to go back on the agenda. There was no action. There's no anything. It just was missing. And so we apologize for that, but we can just send it out as correspondence. And it's something that we can talk amongst ourselves if we think we need to put it somewhere with the materials, the I don't know exactly what that would be shaped like, but Leanne, you, me, and Faye can talk about, can we put the memo that we intended to put up with kind of a supplement later, since we're going to circulate this as a direct email to commissioners? But like I mentioned, you're honestly not missing a whole lot because we just took an older one and we added to it for those purposes. I would be curious if there's anything specific that you felt that the commission was trying to solve through this that I think that most of the discussion was addressed through definitions last time, but then we decided we wanted to go in and there were some general questions associated with affordable housing provisions. There were also some ones associated with how does monitoring work and how do you assure that you're doing those? And we don't have a condition compliance program where we're checking those sorts of things. So unless we structured something where someone is required to report and verify something annually to us, that's not something that's an active program that we have. Leanne, were there any other discussion topics that you happen to recall or got jogged loose by looking at the minutes that you can think of that seems like they may have wanted to continue speaking about? One of the things I remember is that Randy and I were supposed to connect and talk about these things. Commissioner Rickert and I did not connect in the interim. And so when we put together the memo, it was the things that the group had requested, that there's no additional things. And if he's done homework on his own to share, I have not received anything on that. So wouldn't be aware of it.
Thank you.
Can-
Yeah. If you
I-
can, go ahead, Larry.
Well, I was just wondering, and if this isn't the right place in the agenda, we could talk about it later. Just wondering where we are with this construction excise tax process. The recommendations we made, and again, those haven't, if I read right, those haven't been acted on yet by the council. But then I know you've had the process where people could request a refund and for a certain period of time. So just wondering if we're getting close to that time where you'll know if or what amount will be still to give out after all that shakes out. Did that make sense, that question?
Sure. And in the meantime, Faye has found what looks like is the correct Word document that didn't get attached to that PDF. So this was just sort of the brief memorandum that Clay had put together to address those eligibility criteria. So he's got some code references in there, some other things that are helpful to look at for that understanding. But I can certainly start into the next agenda items, which are the statuses of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund monies and the CET, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, I think for Commissioner Hampton, I think Leanne will be able to answer most of your questions in the update for CET. So I think that'd be best to do it.
Okay, so on July 3rd, City Council did meet and I presented your recommendation for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund 23-24 NOFA. And the only applicant for that, if you'll recall, was the Newburgh Area Habitat for Humanity, and they applied for that time-sensitive grant in the amount of $28,580, which was the max for that category. It passed unanimously, so that went really well. The applicant was not able to make it for that meeting, but I've been in touch. I guess the remaining piece of information that I don't know yet is when those funds would be released to Habitat. So I will pass that along as soon as I get that information. The second item, which is we scheduled that for a separate meeting, was the your recommendation for the construction excise tax funding. And that was your two recommendations. We had those two strong contenders for this first round allocation. And let's see, the first one was for Yamhill County Housing Corporation, and they requested $262,500. And then per your recommendation, the remainder would go to Catholic Charities of Oregon, Edlin and Company, and Community Wellness Collective in partnership with Providence. And the amounts to be determined. We're pretty close to getting that number pinned down. There's been some recent information that we've received in regard to the interest that account accrued over its lifetime, and then processing of refunds. So that amount is right around $53,000. And we will present that on August the 19th to City Council. And those folks are certainly welcome to attend that meeting as well. I haven't heard from either of those applicants if they are planning to attend, but that is when it is slated to go before council.
And are we past the deadline now for CET refunds?
Yes, thankfully that is because we were sort of chasing a moving target, in addition to pinning down that interest number, which sort of plays into the calculations, obviously. And then furthermore, there's a remittance to the state that we have to be sure that we have the correct amount. Likewise, the 4% administration fee, we need to make sure that we account for that in the right place. So we think we're there, and that will go before the council, like I said, on August the 19th.
And assuming that all that gets passed as with the recommendations, then at that point, the construction excise tax will basically cease to exist at this time, unless it's somehow put in place again in the future. Is that right?
Well, part of what we're also asking in that presentation is a little more direction from council in regard to that $1 million that they wanted to set aside for what they're calling a legacy dispersal. And Catholic Charities et al. Has, along with the application that they submitted that you folks did review, they're requesting consideration for that $1 million. So we're hoping to get from council when they would like to have that second round legacy NOFA go out. And that way Catholic Charities et al. Can be considered for that, as well as any other applicant who is eligible.
Okay. Okay, so there is still a chunk of money sitting there.
Pretty big chunk.
Yeah, yeah, bigger
Yeah.
than we gave out already. Okay,
The lion's share
Yes.
is awaiting.
Can I ask staff if you anticipate that they will make a decision on the current recommendations that we have, and that you also may receive feedback in terms of a timeline for that 1 million? Like, will it, you're expecting they won't necessarily have the timeline kicked to another meeting or that sort of thing?
I would expect that they would likely act on your recommendation in that August 19th meeting. I have not received any communications indicating a timeline for the second NOFA. But that may be part of a discussion that may start in that city council meeting and may continue. We just don't know yet.
Right,
it
and
isn't always easy to predict what elected bodies will do.
that's right. And
What the will of the council is, and the legacy dispersal portion was news to us as it was happening. So we didn't really have any indication prior to that particular meeting that that was the emerging will of the council until it happened. So that's as far as we know at the moment.
Well, thank you for shepherding our recommendation about Habitat for Humanity through to them, and I'm very excited about that. It's always nice to know when your advisory board's recommendations are received with the same level of enthusiasm. So thank you for that. And do staff members ever want support for any kind of those, you know, city council meetings during presentations, or is that something that you all want to handle on your own? Do you ever need support from commission members here? How can we be supporting you during those times?
Thank you for posing that question. I don't know. I haven't really talked about this with other staff, i.e. Clay and our new director, Scott. I don't know if there's an established protocol for that. Usually the point staff assigned to a particular topic is the one to present to council, and then if council does have questions that are beyond I guess the wheelhouse of the particular staff who's up there making the presentation, then others may answer questions or offer answers to questions. I don't know if that time, Clay, if you think the commission members' presence and input would be helpful in a council meeting.
So commission members are always welcome to be there, but I would say that if you are not acting as a body, then you being there as an individual, you don't get to kind of wear your affordable housing commissioner hat unless you said, I am a commissioner, but these are my feelings as an individual sort of thing. So we do appreciate everything that you all do. If we had some direction where we did feel like it was needed, or we need to somehow pull up input, it might be through a different kind of a mechanism than just coming to the city council hearing. It might be that we ask the chair as the representative to come up. That would be unusual, but I could see situations where that happens. Or more likely, we would say, you know, it'd be nice to get the city council and the affordable housing commissioners in the same place at the same time to go through these and do a joint meeting, kind of like happened last December, which, you know, there were some tense points to that meeting, but I think it was still probably a good thing in moving forward and getting on the same page. And depending on the direction that's received from city council moving forward on this round 2 for CET, it might be that something like that is appropriate in the future so that there's not a constant back and forth. So it really depends. Or if they go the direction where they say they want to do an ad hoc committee. Well, if they said they want to do a committee, staff would probably suggest, well, it's the will of the council to create a committee, perhaps consider grabbing a few of your affordable housing commissioners as well as a couple of city councilors, and they move forward in that kind of a work group format. So that sort of format or those sorts of initiatives can be really helpful for staff to have willing commissioners to participate in those sorts of things that are kind of off the standard schedule.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
thank you.
noticed in the fall community workshop thing, there was a request for commissioners to be present for that. So it just kind of got me wondering, are there other things that maybe folks would want us at and just haven't asked? So if you guys just know, if there is something that would be helpful, please ask. That'd be great, just to know that there's that open invitation to ask more of us if that would be helpful.
Well, that is greatly appreciated. I will also say that when you all suggested that Commissioner Rickert and myself get together and have those discussions, those sort of small outside work groups for staff, it's hard for us to keep those things lined up at times, especially if it's not clear exactly what we're trying to solve. But those sorts of things in your group you can have commissioners get together and you can direct fellow commissioners to work together and come bring something back, but it must be less than a quorum, right? So you can't gather at half the group or half plus one, certainly. because you'll be there. So I would always say you can do that. So if you've got a commission of 5, 2 if you want to get together, then that's fine. And you can kind of assign yourselves homework by that way to kind of noodle over something if there's something that needs kind of some exercise.
Alright. Anything else related to the status of awards?
I think that gets you up to date.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
How about this fall community workshop?
Yeah, so I myself am kind of getting up to speed on this. This is something that we've done in the past, and it's my understanding that is required by the state to evaluate. And I think it's DLCD, but the state is sort of tracking statistics in regard to communities over 10,000 or greater than 25% of renter households pay more than 50% of monthly income on rent. So that's extremely rent burdened. And then like more than 30% is, I guess, just rent burden, but it's still a burden. So in the past, this city has hosted workshops. I believe Doug hosted, our former director, hosted the last one, I think in 22. And so as data is collected and reported, we may sort of fall on and off of that kind of spectrum of extremely rent burden. So it looks like we need to have another workshop. So we are looking at the fall, and that is something that, yes, we would love to have your participation in. And likewise, if you can kind of maybe put feelers out or put the word out, so to speak, with any connections you have, we do want to invite the community to have that conversation with city staff, and let's all talk about what contributes to extremely rent burdened communities, what's the city done in the past, what are ideas for what we can continue to work on in the future, and garner that input from folks. So we just kind of wanted to put that on your radar. And then I guess when we start looking at dates, we would want input, you know, if that's going to work for you folks as well. But we're not quite there yet in terms of scheduling, but we are starting to have those conversations internally with staff about coordinating that fall workshop.
What venue has that workshop been at in the past?
Mostly at the public safety building.
Yeah, the most recent one was the public safety building, and that's the only one that any existing planning staff would have been around for, which I'm the
I
only.
think even I remember a couple of them there. I mean, there've been different formats, different times, but I know I've attended at least a couple of them there.
And with that in mind, and it's not something Leanne and I talked about before, but if you all have been to one or more than one, do you have any feedback from what you saw last time and what you think might be a productive use of time, or tell people, because you know it's been with other topics and other projects that you know a police station is not necessarily one that everyone's comfortable going to for a public open house. So if you have any suggestions either now or as you think about it, then let us know. And I wanted to emphasize too that what Leanne said is to invite people in your networks. Each of the commissioners on this Affordable Housing Commission have ins and networks that we don't know or have. So any kind of friend raising you can help us do in terms of getting the word out and telling other networks would really be greatly appreciated. So when we do get something on the calendar, we will let you know, and then we'll probably give you additional reminders leading up to it.
Right.
Off the top of your head, do you know what Newburgh's percentage is? So the minimum is if a city has 25% of households paying more than 50% of their income. Do you know how many, what Newburgh's percentage is?
I do not off the top of my head, but I will say we're close enough to the threshold that we've gone above and below it. That's part of why we didn't have one in 2023.
Okay. So we're right, yeah, right on that threshold then.
Leanne, you don't happen to remember that number, do you, from the?
I don't know, honestly, where to even look for that data at the moment. I was kind of going back through some of the documents posted, but I don't have new data that's come across my desk.
So I'm gonna, again, at the risk of, is this the right time or not to ask this? I'll ask this. You know, I mean, and partly because having attended a couple of these in the past, you know, a lot of times it seems like kind of the same ideas come out, but really when it comes down to it, a lot of it in Newburgh has to do with just the availability of affordable housing, you know, I mean, and not having as much maybe as we need. So my question is, like, every day I'm driving by the new development going on across from Mountain View, across from Joanne Austin Elementary. Looks like a pretty big development. Do we know anything about, you know, is there a plan? Is there a range of housing there? Is there a plan for some of it to be affordable? Do we know that? Does that fit into, I know several years back there was the kind of requirement put in for a large development that there had to be a certain amount of affordable housing, but then I know there was a question back then about what large meant or whatever. But anyway, so the question is, do we know, you know, you know, with developments that are currently going on, does it seem like there will be some affordable housing options coming from those?
Have builders attended that workshop in the past where they could hear from community members? Because I mean, I'm on a couple of our city Facebook groups and people have a lot of comments that I don't know if our builders are hearing it. And I don't know that there's any other avenue that they would, you know, think to pursue, but I do get this sense that people both need affordable housing, and the pursuit of affordable housing comes with other consequences that they then like, oh, actually, I didn't want that. But, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to build some goodwill between the people building these affordable homes or building somewhat affordable homes. Regardless, whatever it ends up being, I look forward to seeing that because I have not been to one in the past.
Leanne, did you want to jump in and respond to any of these before I do?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. You
Okay.
probably have a little bit more information than I do.
Sure.
I would say that's an excellent idea to invite developers to that workshop. I know that folks that, you know, have put in applications such as Catholic Charities and that group are tracking data like that. They are actively working on projects like that. I'll mention that as part of our reporting to the state, that Portland State University is in charge of is gathering statistics related to housing, population growth, annexation, and analyzing that and you know, returning data to cities and counties. And our annual reporting is due next month. So we will be capturing a lot of that, Larry, that you were sort of asking about. Now, what Clay may be able to call to mind quicker than me at the moment is which of our current housing projects have any units allocated towards affordable housing. Off the top of my head, I don't know. But again, those numbers and the like will be captured in our annual report that we need to submit next month.
I think Leanne is right that my recollection is we do not have any projects currently that have affordable housing compositions. What Commissioner Hampton might be thinking of could be Crestview Crossing initially in some of the approvals earlier, which would have been think the PUD might have been in about 2018 or so, had 11 units or 12 units of affordable housing, but they weren't required to do it because we don't have an inclusive housing ordinance. So we don't, or inclusionary housing ordinance associated with that. So they weren't required to do it. They committed to do it and then they chose not to later. And the justification that I've heard, which is anecdotal, so may not be right, but was that when they started having to pay CET, they didn't want to also have to do affordable housing because they felt like they were getting hit twice.
Yep.
And the most recent kind of large development would be our kind of going back to various questions on kind of what's in there, what's proposed in some of these larger developments. The one for the Colina subdivision, which would be the biggest of those that we've had recently. We haven't seen the architectural drawings associated with those, so we don't know exactly what the housing sizing and typing is going to be. We do have some general items. That speaks a lot more about middle housing, and they've got some products that they're referring to as quadplexes. Based on the subdivision map that I've seen so far, we haven't fully delineated which one would be middle housing lots versus traditional parent lots or lots of record. So we'll have to see a little bit once we get some of those architectural drawings and see really what the differences in those houses are. They do have some design that we've looked at mostly for kind of frontages, composition, and layout that we're expecting those quadplexes where there's going to be some shared drives and shared space associated with those. So that should be a little bit kind of a different layout than what we see in some neighborhoods. So that would have a different kind of feel and look to it. It could be, you know, a different product, but my understanding is those will still be market rate. And that's
Well,
for the
and I guess-
403 units.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for, you know, obviously we have specific definitions of affordable and all that, but yeah, to me, to my mind, even just having a range of housing types that are being built gives at least the possibility of some of them being more, you know, I mean, if they're not all just big single family houses, you know, what we would think of in the past is just the regular kind of R1 or yeah, I mean just the regular big developments, then you know, then there's at least the possibility. I mean, even to a certain extent, just having more apartments and more kind of shared gives the possibility at least of the price, just economic pressures keeping the price a little down.
And I think that we would generally agree with that. And so when I say no affordable, that would be capital A affordable as
Yep.
opposed to little a diversity of housing types and sizes
Right.
and whatnot. We would expect that some of the things to keep in mind of recent things that have been in the development pipeline for us is that we would start seeing final plat has occurred for phase 2 for Crestview Crossing, so that we're expecting those multifamily units, 8 buildings of them over at Crestview Crossing be part of phase 2. So those had previously been approved for 110 single family homes. And then it became 8 multi-unit dwellings that should be closer to 296 dwelling units. So that's something where there's a variety of bedroom counts associated with those units. So they go from, I believe, and it's been a little while, from 1 bedroom up to 3 bedroom in those. And then we do have these other projects coming on, and kind of like I said before, the Colina subdivision being an example where they appear to be trying to incorporate middle housing typologies, specifically quadplexes and single family homes.
So Clay, I've got a clarifying question. So the city of Newburgh currently does not have any requirements for new development at any sort of level of level of units or houses that requires a particular amount of affordable housing units to be included in that specifically for new construction. I'm referring to.
Correct.
That's correct. So is the development that Larry's talking about across from the Joan Austin Elementary School, isn't that like over 500 units, like, or 500 houses? Is that, or?
There's 403 units, and thus far it looks like it's 1 house per unit. So even it's one of the things why I was probably being ambiguous, and I did not intend to be when I was talking about it, is some of the lots or areas where we expect a development to occur, they're still referring to them as middle housing, but to us they look a lot like a single family home that's sharing a driveway with other single family homes. But there could be something that I don't quite understand about it, and I'll be honest, I am not the case planner for it, Jeremiah
Right.
Kennedy is. But we're expecting 403 dwelling units for that division, that subdivision. Now I will say that there's approximately 450 acres in total of greenfield on the north side of town associated with the Springbrook development. And so we're not out of greenfield land for future development, and we don't know what some of those areas will be. But those areas also have been part of that master plan since it was approved in 2008. So also don't want to kind of get people's hopes up that things are gonna
Right.
turn just like that.
Yeah.
Is that typical for most cities of our size? If you know and can speak to that, and that we don't have a requirement for, if you're doing 400 units or 500 units or 1,000 units of housing, new construction, that it seems like cities I've lived in in other states around the country have had sort of like, this seems a little bit strange to me, and I could be wrong.
I'd be-
Like, am I wrong in that? Like,
I'm hesitant to generalize because
Yeah.
there's a lot of diversity, and if you're talking about Oregon or the country or the
right.
West or what have you, coming from where I was in California, it wasn't uncommon, but it wasn't required, so it just really depended. And it depends on the strategies that folks are using too. So if you've got something like CET, which frankly, isn't, we had, but now we don't have it anymore, so that's a change. So that would have been a reason to not have inclusionary housing if you felt this is, we've got a hammer over here, we've got a saw over here, we're just gonna go with the hammer. It's kind of which tools do you decide to put in your affordable housing toolbox? And we no longer have that CET as a tool in our toolbox.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
this city
Yeah.
council decided they wanted to prioritize affordable housing and have additional requirements for that, they could do so. But that's not something we have in our in ours now. And I haven't seen materials that give us kind of a landscape overview on who's doing what, how much of it they're doing for Oregon. That's
Mhm.
just not something I've seen. Leanne, if you've seen anything like that that's handy, I'd love to know about it too, but I haven't come across that exactly.
I haven't, I'll look. Certainly, I think we've heard of example cities that are more aggressive in that regard. Eugene and Bend come to mind. Those are larger communities, but I think that's worth a gander if y'all would like some more data on that.
And I know
Well, and
I'm
again-
very interested in that, and I
Yeah.
think as the Affordable Housing Commission that we sit on, right? Like, I think it's important for us to, with the absence of CET now, as you're speaking about, Clay, and like, I think we need to have some mechanism in place, or at least consider possible mechanisms in place as we continue to develop other properties and land around it within the city limits, and to make sure that we do have affordable housing options for the future.
Well, like I said, I mean, my memory is that the development north of Chandler Valley Middle School and Crater, a lot of that, when that was done, there was a requirement at that point for, again, large development, or there was some term. Unfortunately, that term wasn't well defined, and that was before construction excise tax. And so there was kind of a fight over, did they have to do some or not? And because it wasn't well defined of what that size of development was, then in the end, they really didn't have to honor that. And I think then it kind of shriveled, and then some other things happened, and other recommendations, and we went towards the construction excise tax and all that, but anyway, so that's at least my memory that we tried to have that in Newburgh. It just kind of fizzled.
Mr. Hampton, do you recall if that was being annexed at that time, or if it was just the creating of the neighborhood? This might be a non-issue, but I'm just curious for Leanne and I's.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember that specific part of it. If that was part that, that if it was being annexed in, it had to, yeah.
The only thing that's kind of in the neighborhood of what you're saying that I recall from the code, and I went ahead and pulled it up to make sure I wasn't speaking too liberally, was that we do have a requirement for Quasit when annexation occurs, that if it's a large annexation and it does define it, so it sounds like maybe that was a problem and they tried to fix it.
Yeah,
That there has to be a certain amount of R3 zone lands.
Okay.
So that you can't just have all of it, like an entire neighborhood be all R1, for
Yeah.
example.
yeah, that's probably it then. That it was, yeah, and it would make sense that that area was not, had to be annexed in because it was kind of right on the boundary of where the urban growth boundary had been, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't inside the city, so yeah, that's probably true. And since this other fairly large development's going on now, has been inside the city for a long time, yeah, that wouldn't
Right.
apply. So that makes sense.
That's right, but we do.
yeah,
we do
I'll
have other
add that-
projects. Go ahead, sorry, Leanne.
Just, I think this sounds like a ripe topic for the fall workshop. Where we can have a larger discussion with community members and hear from folks who are rent burdened or extremely rent burdened and what they're facing in terms of affordable housing availability within Newburgh. So we can be prepared to have a conversation about that.
I think that would be great. I think that I think we need to think outside the box, right, as a commission, and we have a city that is of a size where we can do some different sort of scenarios where maybe it's not requiring them to actually make the housing that is, to build it themselves and to do those sort of things, but maybe it's do a donation where they have to give X amount of dollars to like a habitat that we just, helped make to rehab 3 new houses for affordable housing, those sort of things where there's different ways where it doesn't have to be all new construction and it doesn't have to be, it gets me excited to think about those sort of things. And like with ADUs, and I know there's things going on with ADUs and short-term rentals with the city. And I would love to hear if there's also some new developments on that front of where the city council may be going, if you guys have information regarding that. And if they're thinking about newer restrictions on short-term rentals and ADUs going forth.
Those two topics, not so much. The planning commission was concerned about vacation rentals and was interested in sort of having a system largely, I think, by distance from one another, and sort of putting a cap on vacation rentals. We had sort of an ad hoc committee, right, Clay, where we looked at that and brought information back to council. Council was not interested at that time in curtailing vacation rentals. But on the ADU front, we did make it easier for folks to get those permits reviewed with the city. Those are no longer, we're not reviewing those as a separate planning case prior to submitting for building permit reviews. So we're trying to make that easier for folks. And likewise, some of the SDCs around ADUs have also been simplified. So there's a reduction in fees for an ADU that's 1,000 feet or less, versus one that is an application for an ADU that is greater than 1,000 square feet. So hopefully that makes it easier moving forward. We've had permits submitted after that. We've had questions about that. Folks seem to receive that information positively. So
I think one of the things I'm fascinated with as I personally decide if I'm going to do an ADU on my property is thinking about if the city, I mean, I think it would be absolutely progressive and really exciting for the city to waive certain fees for people within the city to commit to doing an X number of how many years for affordable housing with that ADU. Or, like really clear the way for people and make it that want to be passionate about knowing that the housing crisis is here and they don't necessarily need, market rate rent coming in. All of the things. I think there's a lot of things that we could think about as a commission and the city council can think about too going forth, as I'm sure you guys think about a lot in your work day to day.
Well, one of the things that after the HB 2006 workshop that we do, we'll have some public input to talk about, and we'd be happy to share the results from that. So if this group would like to form some kind of a recommendation or a statement to the city council on that, that would be something to consider. We do also still have an accepted housing production strategy. So the city council has not adopted it formally, but it is something that we have that was created and generated. That's got strategies, tools, analysis, all sorts of good stuff associated with it. So if that's something that hasn't been reviewed in the past, that would be a great place to kind of look at what did that analysis do in terms of saying these are some of the right strategies that the city could be doing to address some of the housing affordability issues. That might also tell you, that might give you an opportunity to look at things and say, I think we could be doing more. I don't see these things on this suite of options. So those
That
are
would be
things.
great.
And we do have a work plan that we do, and the city council can add things to that work plan. But we've told them too that we keep a work plan in part so that they know and we know what the priorities are. And we ask them when they put things on that, if they add new stuff, then we say, where does it fit? Is it one of the critical projects, a significant project, or just another thing that we're gonna, it's something we need to do, but it's not as high as the other ones. So that's something we worked out. For example, the vacation rental one, like Leanne had said, we had a kind of an extensive back and forth that included the planning commission, a research paper, an ad hoc committee, speaking to the police department to get some stats on those things. And the city council would like us to look at and do some outreach around updating those regulations. And so based on that ad hoc committee, we do have some tentative recommendations from them, and we'll be starting that as kind of a baseline of what we heard. And when we do public outreach, we'll say, this is what we heard. How do you all feel about it? Is it enough? Is it too much? Is it something else? And those sorts of things. But the other thing I wanted to mention on the ADUs is, and I'm sorry if I missed it and if someone already said it, but some of the fees associated with SDCs were recalibrated to include and think about ADUs. So ADUs are typically limited to, Leanne, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 1,000 square feet. And
Yeah, I mentioned that, Clay.
oh, all right. So that, yeah, so I think that some of those sorts of things are trying to be good.
Thanks, Larry.
Yep, thank you, sorry.
So, sorry, I had tuned out when I think I was trying to pull something up. But some of those recalibrations on fees really can be helpful for development, and not just for ADUs, but also for other small footprint developments like cottage clusters and things like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's fascinating. Like it is also intertwined in different ways, right? As you know, throughout your daily work and going back and forth with planning commission and all the things. So department.
It's a multifaceted thing and a conversation to have. And we're committed to looking at all avenues. And we're partnered with folks that are looking at this from the public sector as well. And I think it would be good to have some of those folks at the workshop and help us brainstorm. But certainly we want to welcome all of y'all's ideas about that within that workshop and help us have a really robust conversation with our residents and hopefully stakeholders. I think that would be amazing to have some developers there. We'll see what we can do about that. But yeah, we want to make this fall workshop as productive and helpful for our residents as we can.
Staff update on the community development block grant.
Sure. Leanne, would you like me to do that, or would you like to hop in?
Yeah, I don't really have any information on that topic, so.
Okay. Yeah, I was the case planner for this one. So basically, this was a community development block grant that was initiated in 2021 as far as the application process. Doug Rux really took it along for the city's main point of contact until he retired in November. And I just kind of took over getting it across the finish line in the last couple of months. So we did the administrative closeout. They helped, I believe it was 30 families or households. They kind of used some of that language interchangeably in some of their closeout materials, but shared a presentation to the city council in June. And it was really, it was a very feel-good kind of a presentation because it really showed what they were doing for the homes and rehabilitation of those homes. And so that is the same program that your award recommendation was related to from the last meeting we had. So it was that same program. It was a $500,000 community development block grant. So that's closed. That was kind of deemed successful. And they still have a wait list of others they're trying to do. It focuses on manufactured homes. They were successful in also getting another community development block grant. And so these are going on through the Yamhill County Affordable Housing Corporation, which is a nonprofit, and the Yamhill County, then the Housing Authority of Yamhill County basically does the work. So the one's the nonprofit level, and the other one is essentially the executor of the work and the project manager. So they've been successful through the city of Newburgh getting another community development block grant. The city of Newburgh, as well as city of McMinnville and most other cities in the county, are on the board for the Yamhill County Affordable Housing Corporation. So we can get some benefit out of that too locally. Although what typically happens is that either Newburgh or McMinnville is the primary applicant for the grant, and then we alternate on those funding cycles. So now it's McMinnville's turn. We're still going to stay attuned in case, you know, if they run out of people to help, then we'll be happy to have them come help us more locally.
Yeah.
But we try and work closely with them to make sure that's a healthy relationship and that at the county level that we're all cooperating on those sorts of activities.
Beautiful. Any questions about the block grants?
No, I think, thank you for explaining that, because in a past life, when I worked for a nonprofit in Southern California, like we did CDBG grant, and I should just say community development block grants, it's easier. But we used to use the acronym. And I was curious if we had applied it for the city of Newburgh or not, but so thank you for explaining that it goes back and forth and how that kind of structure works here locally within the county.
Sure. And if, and we are not, there are a finite number of community development block grants that we can participate in any given time, but it's more than one. So it is possible if we have others come in that would like to pursue something that we can pursue those, but there are some limitations on those. Most of ours that have been the most consistent and frankly that I've seen records for within our materials have typically been through the Yamhill County Affordable Housing Corporation. I haven't seen us do community development grants, block grants with other parties, but we could in theory do that. So if you through your contacts, commissioners have those, or you know anyone that decides to watch this recording wants to, they can send those to us and we'll contemplate those, be happy to speak with them about what they're proposing and see if it's something that floats.
It's good to know. Thank you, Clay.
I have a question about something that's not on our agenda at all. We haven't had a student member of our commission in a while. Is there any effort in the somewhat near future to recruit one?
Well, Leanne, you probably know some of the same stuff that I do, but
Yeah,
I'll
I
let you
don't,
go if you want.
I haven't heard us talk about that, so.
Okay.
I know.
Go ahead, Faye. Faye probably does know because Faye does a lot of the onboarding is associated with all of our committees and commissions that touch community.
So I have actually just talked to Rachel, and the recruitment is still out. Unfortunately, we have had no takers for the Affordable Housing Commission for a student. So it's still out there. They're still taking applications and stuff. So if you know of any students, it doesn't have to be high school, it could be college, that's interested, throw them over to our webpage on the boards and commissions, and they can fill out an application and send it our way. I tell them it's great for scholarships if they're in high school.
Ooh, there you go.
And I will say it is hard for us to get and retain student commissioners. Obviously, a lot of times they move on to different parts of their life or they leave town or what have you. So student commissioners are good to have, hard to hold on to, unfortunately.
Faye, do you know if outreach has been done to, you know, like with George Fox within certain departments that focus on maybe housing and planning and city planning, that sort of majors?
Yes,
Okay,
they send it out to George Fox and they send it out to the high school and the Catalyst school.
great.
And I think they even send it out to Linfield.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that the process is open and it's out there and you can't force someone to apply, but I like that we're still, you know, actively looking. I didn't know how that window of application worked, if it was closed or only opened for a limited time.
Would it be, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was it. I was just gonna say that if you know anyone from your networks, it's perfectly okay to encourage them to apply. Or to tell people to encourage people that they know.
Or to talk to a department head or that sort of thing and just let them know about that opportunity and that they can encourage students to do that and apply.
Send them our way through whatever contacts you have, and more the better. I mean, that's one of the things our commissioners that is unique about them. You all have unique networks that not everybody wants to hang out with city employees.
What are you talking about? We enjoy talking with you guys.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Is there a timeline, and excuse me if I missed that, but is there a timeline for when you're hoping to find a date for that fall community workshop?
We are going to discuss that internally in a meeting shortly and probably come up with, I would imagine, a handful of plausible dates and then sort of see what works best for folks to attend, folks that we'd like to have there, y'all included, of course. So we will keep you posted as soon as we get plausible dates for that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Next meeting is set for October 22nd. Is that also 4 to 6 p.m.?
That's my expectation. We try not to change the times too much because we don't want to surprise any of our commissioners.
Get that in.
All righty. Well, I can never remember this. Do we need a motion to adjourn or do I just declare adjournment?
You just declare that it's adjourned. If you had a gavel, this would be when you use it.
Oh, I have a gavel somewhere, but it's not handy. So we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Mm.